The Qur'an it says, "Qulu washrabu wa la tusrifu." Eat and drink, but do not be excessive. Food is described in the Quran as halalan tayyiba, the halal food, but it's also pure, linking purity to the concept of halal and wholesomeness. We find that the Jannat is described via its food. So foods and descriptions and nutrition has a big role to play in Islam. So all the famous scholars of Tib Nabawi emphasize the importance of diet. Jalaluddin As-Suyuti, Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, Imam Shafi dedicated many volumes of his work to the importance of looking after the body. Hippocrates, the father of medicine, said, "Let food be your medicine and medicine your food. Whosoever does not give consideration to these points or ignorant of them, how can that person understand disease?" In other words, medicine depends on nutrition, which is a very important component. And even in modern medical teachings today, we find that there's a large research going into the nutritional implications and the connections to disease. So what is the importance of good nutrition? Why the big fuss about what to eat? Let's look at some facts. When we consume food, it breaks down into different units in the body, and those units become the building blocks of every organ in the body. Food turns into material for growth. So when we consume good nutritious food, it means that every cell and organ enjoys proper function because it obtains its building blocks from purity. Food has been recognized to stimulate the brain. There's certain foods that you consume that can cause you to be more mentally alert. And the converse is also true. Foods are recognized for their immune boosting qualities. So there's certain foods that we eat that's being studied today in depth to upregulate immune cells. So the white blood cells in the body, the army of the body that fights off illness, those cells improve in function due to the presence of certain foods. Foods like ginger, turmeric, there's certain fruits as well. Then we have good mood food. There's some foods that we eat that makes us feel really good, like chocolate, makes everybody happy. But certain foods that gives us instant gratification doesn't always necessarily correlate to good nutrition. So there's certain foods that can uplift your spirit, and there's certain foods that can make you sluggish. We call them superfoods. And what's amazing, or it's not really amazing because we should expect the Sunnah to be miraculous, is that every Sunnah or every Sunnah food that the Prophet ﷺ loved has amazing immune boosting qualities, antioxidant qualities, anti-cancerous qualities. And we'll speak about that. Today food is recognized as medicine. Throughout Tib Nabawi, food has been recognized as medicine. In the chapters of the Mufradat, which refers to singular foods, meaning medicine can be found in a single fruit or veg, but it depends on the constitution of the body. We find that the people on the outskirts of the city, meaning the rural villages, where they live off the land, they eat simple foods. Food as medicine is a reality for them. But the people of the cities, with our complex diet, eating food upon food, we find we require more complex medication. So Tib Nabawi also teaches us to appreciate simplicity. Foods are recognized to be good for certain systems of the body. So you have cardioprotective food, carminatives for the digestive system, food that assists in respiratory conditions. So if you look at the structure of every cell, we see there's a perfect organization. There's a perfect pattern, flawless. If you look at the cosmos, we see the same pattern. If you look at the human body, there's a perfect pattern as well. And within produce, vegetation, there's perfection. In the structure of food, there's a perfect organization. And we find when man tries to tamper with the genetics of food, the barakah is lost. When we try to make tomatoes more redder, grow quicker, We lose the essence of the food that we cannot measure. But when that food grows according to Allah's design, the medicinal value can be measured scientifically. Allah says in the Quraan that Shaitan will deviate man to try to change his creation. And we find ourselves in a time of genetically modified food, where the capitalist system and other forces influence the food industry to such an extent where food are produced on a mass scale in an unethical manner. So the call worldwide is towards eco-friendly, towards a green world, to consume organic food, to live off the land, to be involved with agriculture physically, to grow our own food at home. But this is modern day society. We find that we used to consume highly carb, sugar foods in mass production that's produced very quickly. And if you follow the principle of you are what you eat, then this is how most of us can end up looking. So you know that the term ecosystemist comes from maybe having too much ecosystemist. So definitely we are what we eat. As we mentioned, if we consume pure foods, it becomes the building blocks of the body. So the opposite is true. If we consume foods that are not so nutritious, it will cause second-hand or inferior type of building block for the body. We know that we live in a time where food is packaged, highly processed. The original state of the food is unknown because there's so much colors, artificial flavorings added to foods. Mass production. Consuming the buffet meal becomes the order of the day. So we aim for the cheapest price to consume as much food as we can. And the result is that it affects us. So it's possible for us to eat ourselves into a coma. But also, everything we eat in excess translates into some lifestyle disease when it carries on unchecked. So the objective of the presentation is not to point out our faults. The presentation aims to put Tiba Nabawi in context. What is our current state? What does Tiba Nabawi recommend? And how do we bridge that gap? So globally, it is recognized that the westernized model, globalization, which moves countries towards modernity, which means that you have cable TV, you have microwaves, you have drive-thrus. That culture, alongside that culture, you find an increase in lifestyle diseases, cancers, diabetes, mental illnesses. So wherever the society is so-called modern according to that standard, they inherit the diseases of the West. However, when you do what we call epidemiological studies, studies of populations in the rural areas, so if we go to the Transkei and we study the people, what they eat, so they live off the land, they farm their food, they have simple food, they eat together, there's no TV, and you study the illnesses, you'll find almost 0% rates of cancers, of lifestyle diseases. When those people or their children urbanize to the city and start consuming what we eat, burgers and chips and Gatsby's every day in front of the TV for hours, living that Western model, they inherit the illnesses. And this studies has been done worldwide. Go look at the people of Morocco, India. Wherever there's a Western, modern, first world model and a rural society, the research shows the same. That as we westernize and we're going for this fast-paced lifestyle, we consume the same model of food that's consumed in the modern world, in that same manner, there's an increase of illness. There's an increase of obesity, of heart conditions, of stress, affecting our children. Children are born into this model where parents feed their children these types of food. So we find there's an increase of psychological conditions, stress-related conditions. Children are becoming diabetic. They're suffering heart conditions, stress, chronic fatigue, ADHD, behavioral problems. And within nutritional medicine, we link all of the problems to what we consume. So we live in a society whereby we feed our children that which is detrimental to them. But we don't know better. Fortunate for us, we have Tibba Nabawi that teaches us on how to connect to that fitrah, that natural way, that natural design, that coincides with a time whereby the research world is calling towards the same message of Tibba Nabawi. So we find the most advanced researchers are living according to Tibba Nabawi due to their millions of dollars of research, looking at the digestive system and seeing that what we consume, the way we consume it, courtesy, adab, everything that the Sunnah teaches us affects our digestion. It affects every cell of the body. So Tibba Nabawi teaches us that every time we eat and drink, we either feed a disease or we fight the disease. So you have a food that increases your immune system or a food that depresses the immune system. Sugar, by the way, is recognized as an immune suppressant. There's some theories that mention that societies, there's an inverse proportion or there's a direct proportion to sugar and cancer rates in societies. So in the Western society where there's high consumption of sugar, we find there's also increase. Whilst every illness has multifactorial components, diet is a very strong one.